So setting up an enclosure for a reptile can be pretty pricey, especially if you're going to spend quite a bit of money on the actual animal. But luckily there's some different ways that you can save money when setting this enclosure up. So we don't want to cut corners when we're making this enclosure because you need to make sure it has everything they need. But today we're going to be kind of trimming down the corners to where we save some money, but they don't notice the difference. So the first thing we've got right here is the bedding. Chances are you're going to need some sort of bedding for your animal. Now I think it was my last video, I just talked about different beddings, so I won't be talking about this in this video, but one of the very simple alternatives for some reptiles can be something like newspaper, which you can just get for free or for really cheap. When you buy the substrate by a bag, it can be somewhat pricey, and if there's not too much in the bag, you might have to buy more bags and replace it every so often. So there are different alternatives, but like I said, I'm not talking about that, and you can find another video on alternative beddings. So secondly, it's possible you're going to need a heat lamp. Not all reptiles need heat lamps, but some do. And these things, this one, I can't remember who it's made by, but it's said on the package, Reptile heat lamp. And it's a pretty fancy one and pretty expensive. You can see it's just a black one, and it has this switch right here to turn it on and off. And then you can just put in any light bulb that you need, or ceramic bulb or whatever. So these are pretty pricey, and there's a very simple alternative, which is just a cheaper heat lamp. So this one, it's silver, it's not painted or anything. It's a bit flimsier and thinner metal, I think. Yeah, it feels just a little bit thinner, but there's really no difference, and really the only difference is it doesn't say Reptile on the package. You can get these from Home Depot or other hardware stores, or on Amazon. I think I got this for like $8 on Amazon, and when this one can be way more. So there are a few differences. Like this one, it has a switch on the top that turns it on and off, and this one has a switch right here. But something interesting is this expensive one right here, the switch is broken. I can barely use it now, and I have to tape it down for it to actually work. So just look for cheaper ones that don't say Reptile. They won't sell them in pet stores, but they're easy to find. The third thing you're going to need for just about every reptile or amphibian is a water bowl. And these can get pretty fancy. This one I think came in a kit when I got my first snake, and he outgrew it, so I use it with my leopard gecko now. But there's really no need to have such a fancy little bowl. So the alternative is possibly completely free, and it's just using some sort of Tupperware. So right here I've got just a plastic Tupperware. I don't know, it's probably just worth a few cents. And you can just stick this in the enclosure, and I like to put a rock in it so that the reptile can't knock it over, and then just fill it up like usual. You need to make sure that these Tupperwares are about the same size as the actual bowl they need. You want to make sure they can get in and out of it. The Tupperwares can be pretty tall, so you might need to cut them down. If you do cut them down, just make sure you somehow smooth the edge down, because the edges on plastic will be sharp once you cut it. So if you cut it, you might need to sand it down with sandpaper, or put tape over it, or you can melt the edge down. But this one is the correct height, so I don't need to do that, and it already has a smooth surface that won't hurt the animal. This is almost better than this, other than it not looking as good, because one, if it gets too dirty, you can just throw it away and use another one. And if you want to try and clean it, it's completely smooth, and it's going to be easier to clean than this weird rocky stuff right here. So it's very simple to save some money on the water bowl. Just make one just like that. Final thing I've got is a hide. So this is sort of like the water bowl in the sense that it's pretty fancy looking, and it has a pretty nice look and goes well with the enclosure and with the animals. But again, these can be pretty overpriced, and there's no reason to spend that much if you don't have it or if you don't want to. Right here are two that I've basically made. The first one, I guess this one's a bit closer to this one right here, because it has just basically one hole opening, and then it's completely covered on the top, and this one's even covered on the bottom. This is just another Tupperware. It has a top that can come off, but I just leave it on there, and I actually put a rock on top of this for the same reason, so they don't knock it over. And there's all sorts of things you can do with this. Once you cut a hole in it, remember the plastic can be sharp. So what I've done on this one is I melted it down with a lighter. I ended up catching it on fire, so be careful, and you might want to go with the sanding down or just taping the edges so it's not sharp, and I can run my finger all around this with no problem. It doesn't hurt or cut me or anything. So you will notice, of course, this is clear. Well, this doesn't let light in. This can be important for nocturnal animals or diurnal animals that simply get scared if they don't feel completely covered. So something you might want to do is either paint this or do what I do with this one. First, I'll mention the paint. You want to make sure you use acrylic paint, because this is completely non-toxic once it's dry, and it doesn't smudge or smear or come off or anything. It's completely safe. Make sure whatever you're painting, it's dry while you're painting it, and then once it's wet, let it dry for at least 24 hours, probably like a few days, to be safe, and then there is no harm that can be done to your animal from the paint. It's very easy to get this kind of everywhere, and it will stain anything it touches, and it's not going to come off, so be careful with it, but it's completely non-toxic and a great choice. Now what I do with this one is, it's the same size Tupperware as this. I just turned it over and cut a little opening in it. Now what I do with this is I put this into the dirt and then cover it with more dirt, so it's like a little den. It looks pretty cool. You can barely see the plastic if I cover it well. And it's another great alternative. The same thing, I melted this down a bit and sanded it, and it's just fine. And again, these two things are completely free. Okay, so that's everything for this video. I showed you some possible alternatives for the substrate, the lighting, the water bowl, and the hide. If you have more ideas on how to save money when making a reptile enclosure or just keeping reptiles in general, make sure to let me and others know in the comments. But that's all I've got for you today. Hopefully you learned something and it might help you out. If you have more questions, make sure to ask. But that's it. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.